Welcome back to Beyond Dafeet. I'm Kez, and this video, first video of 2020, Happy New Year. We're going to be comparing the Hoka Clifton 6 to the New Balance 1080 version 10. Let's get into it. So firstly, who are these shoes for? If you want that long distance trainer, want something lightweight but still a lot of plush cushioning underneath the foot, both of these will work great for that. Both have a lot of cushioning underneath the heel as well as the forefoot, both incorporating that rocker sole, so it is quite a bit of a bevel at the rear of the foot. Very similar shoes, just two different brands' takes on it. You could probably look at the Bondi and the 1080, but the Clifton does just as good a job and still a bit more lightweight than the Bondi. If you're coming back from an injury and just want a lot of cushioning underneath the foot, either of these will work great for that. Training for your first marathon, if you want a daily trainer as well as something to run in on the day, both these will work great for that as well. So we'll start off with the differences. Your weight, you're looking at 255 grams for your men's Clifton 6 and 281 for your 1080 version 10. With your stack height in your Clifton 6, it's got a 5mm offset, so you've got a 29 to 24 stack height, whereas your 1080, you're running with that 8mm drop, and it's got that 30 and 22. So you do have a bit more cushioning underneath your 1080, but it is running with that bit more of a drop, so that 8mm. Both having that rocker sole, so feel very similar underneath the foot. I feel like the 1080 has a bit more responsiveness to it compared to the Clifton. You just do sink into it a bit more, and your hypo knit on your 1080 does hug the foot a lot better. It just feels like you're putting on a second sock, whereas your Clifton, you're just using that stock standard double layered mesh that most brands are doing at the moment. Starting with the outsoles, you've got a lot more exposed foam in that midfoot on your Clifton 6. If you are kind of that lateral heel to midfoot strike, you're going to chunk out a lot of that rubber. They are still using, I'm pretty sure, air-blown rubber in the landing zone. A lot of runners end up just chunking out that back half of the heel in the Clifton 6. The shoe kind of looks a bit tattered before it has a lot of K's into it. Good rubber on the forefoot as well as the toe off, so the durability up front's great. I think one thing they could improve is just that landing zone. With your 1080, I am currently using this as a daily trainer. It's basically my go-to shoe at the moment. They do use an endurance carbon rubber in the landing zone as well as the toe off, so both those black parts there are an endurance rubber, so it's carbon rubber. Not as much exposed foam in the 1080, hence why it's that slightly bit heavier, and just that air-blown rubber underneath your forefoot. So it's still, even though you've got 22 mils of fresh foam underneath your forefoot, that air-blown rubber does come into play as a cushioning system as well, and just your endurance rubber for your toe off. So you'd probably expect a slightly bit longer out of this outsole on the 1080 than you would your Clifton. Difference between the cushioning systems in both these shoes, your Hokas are just running with that stock standard EVA that they do use. It's great, nice and lightweight, heaps of cushioning and pretty decent response as well. One thing about this midsole, so if you do have that kind of medium or lower arch, this does have a bucket seat. Your foot is kind of sitting about 5mm into the cushioning as well. So if you do have that lower arch on that medial side, that can just irritate you. So just take that into account. If you do have that lower arch, something like the Arahi might work a bit better, or the 1080. So that just doesn't have much of an aggressive bucket seat in it. Midsole's nice and lightweight. It's a lot better than the Clifton 5. That and the Clifton 4 just had quite a firm midsole, but this has gone back to kind of that 3. Clifton 3 was my favourite shoe, and just haven't found a Clifton the same since. But this is a great daily trainer, and it's nice and lightweight for how much cushioning you got. Moving on to that Fresh Foam X, still that EVA New Balance using a few laser engraved spots on that lateral side, so if you are that heavy lateral strike, it just does absorb nicely. Not as much as that bucket seat, so it is slightly a bit more built up on that medial side, but it doesn't feel like a bucket seat like the Clifton. I find this great for those longer runs. Can work a bit of tempo in this as well, so it is still lightweight, being at that 280 grams. It's still a lot of cushioning, very forgiving on the body as well. Durability out of the midsoles, you'd probably expect the same lifetime, so about that 800 to 900 Ks, or that kind of 500, 550 miles. Very similar durability in these shoes. Your outsole on your 1080 is probably going to last that bit longer than the Clifton. That's just because it does have a bit more rubber, hence why it's a bit heavier. Moving on to your uppers, so these are completely different uppers. So you do have that stock standard double layered mesh, detached tongue, does have that lace loop so it doesn't slip down to that lateral side. Very breathable upper, and just got your stitching in that midfoot area just to lock down the midfoot very well. Just doesn't stretch as much over time as that mesh does. Nice heel counter, V-shaped heel, so it will hug your heel very well. and nice concave there. The 1080 has a slightly bit more concave area for the heel. Toe box on this, as well as the midfoot. If you do have a slightly higher arch, these do fit a bit deeper, so if you've got a bit more volume in your toes, these will fit a bit deeper compared to your 1080. So with your 1080, they got that hypo knit, so it's quite elastic, so it's got a lot of stretch to it, so it's kind of like a second sock on the foot. You do have a lot of threading on that midfoot area to lock in the midfoot, and it is a booty fit. It's attached the whole way through that midfoot area. Good lacing, slightly a bit shallower of a toe box compared to the Clifton, and this ultra heel, so it is quite a bit different. They're like using a neoprene, but this does still lock in the heel quite well. A bit more of a U shape than the Clifton, so if you are wanting something a bit narrower at the heel, I'd probably look at the Clifton, whereas this is a bit more of an open shape. I do have quite a narrow ankle, and it seems to work well with me. I still have locked laces though, so just making that fit a bit more secure. I have personally chose the 1080 version 10. Reason being, I used to love Hokas. I had a Bondi 4, Clifton 2, Clifton 3. After that Clifton 4, I kind of just fell off that Clifton bandwagon. This, I just have that kind of Clifton 3 on that pedestal. That's why I kind of haven't picked up Cliftons again. So the 1080, quite a bit different to the V9. I just have been loving running in this shoe. A lot of cushioning underneath that whole foot. That rocker sole with that 8mm drop actually works quite well, so it takes a lot of that heel strike out of it, and you're just landing on more of that midfoot as well as your forefoot. And with having 22mm stack height underneath your forefoot, there's a lot of cushioning there over the longer runs. I'll be looking to use this over the next few months in the bulk of my training. It's just that lightweight cushion shoe that actually works great. Knit's very breathable as well. It's just a one layered knit, but it is stretchy and very breathable. Just fits the foot nicely. Flexibility in these shoes, so they don't have a whole lot of flex to them, even though they're both a neutral shoe. So there's not a whole lot of flexibility both ways compared to something like your Triumph, which is very flexible. So very similar flexibility with most of these, and the toe off on them don't have a whole lot of flex on that Clifton 6, whereas you do in your 1080. So slightly bit more kind of that softer cushioning underneath that forefoot, and they may have a few flex screws in the actual midsole itself. If you've got any questions about either of these shoes, if you want us to touch on anything more, just hit us up in the comments. Cheers for the 500 subs. We're halfway to 1,000, so we'll bust that out over the January. If you gain any knowledge, hit that like button. If you want to keep updated with what Beyond Defeat are doing, hit the subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. So it locks down that foot nicely over time. Bit of that 3D print around the back to hold the foot in well. That won't be in the video.